Hello everyone and welcome back to Make a Website Lessons on Codecademy. So in the last lesson we finished off by looking at a review of what we had learned, and we found out that we had learned quite a lot. We learned about headings, paragraphs, divs, and then we also got told that we are going to be learning about CSS in the next section, or this section right now, because we looked at divs and divs used classes. So we didn't really look at what classes are, and they were kind of a mystery, but now we're going to see what they actually are and how they work and why they're so useful. So CSS is a language used to style websites. Colors, fonts and page layouts for a site can all be managed using CSS. The more comfortable you are with CSS, the better equipped you will be to create stylish and contemporary looking websites. Instructions. The web browser shows a site styled with HTML and CSS. In this lesson we will build the CSS from scratch. Click next to get started. So let's look at this. As you can see, it looks quite pretty, if I do say so myself. You can click read now, a book by J. Daniels Bedford, and there's actually text on top of an image, which we couldn't really manage to do without CSS. So let's see how this works. Take a look at the web browser. Technically, this is the same site you saw in the previous exercise. It contains the exact same HTML elements and contents as before. What's missing? The CSS that was used to previously style the site has been unlinked. So this file, index.html and main.css, aren't connected in any way. As you can see, the text is the same, but nothing else is. The HTML link element links a CSS file to an HTML file so that CSS styling can be applied. Here's an example of the link element. So it's again a tag, and it's self-closing, which is signified by the slash at the end of the tag. So it has three attributes. It has rel, type, and href. We are familiar with href. It's just a link to somewhere, and in this case we are linking it to something local, and that local place is called main.css, so it's this. Then you have rel. So rel specifies the relationship between the current file and the file being linked to. So in this case the relationship attribute is stylesheet. If you've watched my JavaScript and HTML lessons, then you would have realized by now that rel can be other things as well, such as JavaScript scripts, for example. So then you have type, specifies the type of file linked to. So in this case it's text and CSS, and as I said, href provides the URL of the file being linked to, because otherwise there's really no point in doing it, as it won't really know where you're looking at. And these can be ordered in any way, so you can have first href, then rel, then type. You can have type, href, rel. You can put them in any way because they are attributes, and they're read up in the same way, so it really doesn't matter. Like the HTML image element, link is self-closing. It does not need a closing tag, as I mentioned. And in the example above, main.css is an external style sheet. Using external style sheets is one of the most popular ways to write CSS. Inline Css is another method. So inline Css means that you are doing it right here, where I just wrote DSF ASDF, and external style sheets is when you have a separate file for all of the styling. And that's much better because you can, if you edit something in here, it also edits every single element in here. But if you edit the body here, and then you wanted to edit it on another website, you had to, on another web page or on your website, you would have to go to that web page and then edit it again. But with a file, then you would only need to do it in the CSS file, and it's going to be applied to every single web page that you have. Instructions. Let's use the link element to connect index.html and main.css. Inside the head element of index.html, insert a link element that connects index.html and main.css. Use the code snippet above as a guide. I can never completely remember the actual code, but I will do my best without looking. So it was the link element. Then you have link, you have href equals something. In this case, that's going to be main.css. Then you have type, which in this case is going to be text/sheet, I believe, or something like that. And there was relationship, and that's equal to style sheet. And I have a feeling that my type is wrong, so let's just, okay, it's text./css and rel style sheet href main.css. Good. If we run it, as you can see, it comes up just as it was before. And also, as I mentioned in the start, as you can see, my link tag is in a different order. So it has href at the start, type in the middle, and rel at the end. But it still displays it the same way and correctly. You don't have to put them in this exact order. So click run and notice the effect in the browser. Main.css is now linked to index.html. So now everything, so for example, the body is styled in this way. So now the body here is all going to be styled by these attributes. We will learn how that works later on. So main.css, okay, the CSS from main.css is now applied to the HTML elements in the index.html. So in this file. Moving on. And if you guys have any questions anytime in this lesson, do feel free to ask in the comments down below. I will make sure to answer your question as soon as possible. Awesome job! Now main.css is linked to index.html. Before we start writing our CSS, let's take a look at how CSS code works. The diagram to the right shows the anatomy of a CSS rule. Rule, a list of CSS instructions for how to style a specific HTML element of group or HTML elements. So this is the whole thing, I guess. Selector, this is what I understand better, specifies exactly which HTML element to style. Here h1 is the selector. So if you put h1 as the selector, all h1 elements will be styled in this way, unless you have inline styling, which I kind of mentioned before. So in the case of, in your HTML document you have styled something, then it's not going to take these attributes. But if you haven't styled it, the default is going to be whatever you've put in your CSS external file. So in this case, if you haven't styled the color, then the color of h1 is going to be red, which and in this case property and values are here. So the property is color and you're changing its value to red. That goes in between the curly braces after the selector. Click next to continue. Hopefully I covered everything there. So one of the most effective ways to enhance the look and feel of a website is by changing the font. You don't want Comic Sans. In CSS, font is managed using the font family property. So font family, just font. Above the font family property of the h1 selector is set to the value of Georgia, with serif as a fallback font. Fallback fonts are included in case a visitor's web browser does not support the first font, or they haven't downloaded, or whatever. Sometimes more than one fallback font is used. So for example, if the web browser doesn't support Georgia, then serif is going to be used. If the web browser doesn't support serif, then the third one is going to be used, for example Calibri, because I'm pretty sure that all browsers support that. Instructions: the Mistwood publisher's website could be improved with a more stylish font. In main.css, locate the h1 selector. So let's just look at the code here. You have a selector for body, you're changing the attribute height to 100%. So that means all of it is going to be taken up. We'll talk about that later. You have margin 0, text align, center. Then you have h1, which is what we're interested in. h2 is styled as that. So in this case, h1 and h2 would actually be the exact same size. But now we want to change something so that they do look slightly different. So we want to change the h1 selector. We want to select the font family and change it to Palatino. I've never heard of that font actually. and that's not how you spell it. Comma, so we're putting a fallback font as well. Also, make sure to capitalize them correctly, because sometimes that does matter. Serif at the end. And don't forget the semicolon, which I usually do, and then wonder what's gone wrong. Inside of the curly braces, that we have, and click run and notice the change to the words Mistwood Publishers Ltd. So we are looking at this here. Let's run it, and as you can see, the font did change slightly, and that is what we wanted it to do. Mistwood Publishers Ltd. There. Oh no, I think we were looking at that. Oops. Let's comment that out. Don't worry too much about these comments now. I'm just trying to show off what it looked like before. So basically, this is just commenting. It just makes it so that it ignores the line. So this is the current font before we styled it. After we're styling it, the font changed. So that's it for today, guys, about CSS. If you have any questions, as I said before, do feel free to ask in the comments down below. If you like this video, then please make sure to give it a like, share and subscribe. If you didn't like it, then press the dislike button. Tell me in the comments down below why you didn't like it, so I can improve for next time. But until that next time, thank you so much for watching and goodbye.